I have a clicker to advance my slides, so I'm going to have to sit here and try to do it from this vantage point. But yeah, I'm coming from northern Arizona out on the Navajo Nation. The area where I live and work is called the Painted Desert, so greetings to you all in the Painted Desert. All right, so this time of the year, actually mid-October, from late July to October, is fair season out on the Navajo Nation. The Navajo Nation is large. I'm going to show you a map of it here in just a minute. The lady on the left here is Lauren Kay. She's been a major rep for over 30 years. In January of 2013, the Navajo Nation marched in President Obama's second inaugural parade in D.C. This is one of the queens getting ready to take part in one of the parades. Now this, all right, so this, for those of you who don't know what I do, this is one of the things that I do. I paste pictures onto structures out on the reservation. And this is one of the first pieces I put up in 2009. And I was really attracted to that radio announcer stand just because the wood is beautiful, but also I thought it was cool to pair like a rodeo image with a structure where rodeos occur. So roughly a year after I put that first piece up, I was driving by this rodeo announcer stand and I saw this guy overworking, getting the rodeo grounds ready for an upcoming event. So I went over to speak with him, and he didn't know who I was. I introduced myself, and I told him that I was the one who put the photo on the rodeo announcer stand. And it was interesting because, you know, I never know how people are going to respond when I tell them that I'm responsible for putting unsolicited artwork on their building. But he was incredibly gracious, and he said, you know, I've been wondering who is responsible. Oh, sorry about that. I was wondering who put that piece up. I just wanted to thank him. I liked it a lot. So I was happy to hear that and asked him if I could put another piece up. And he was totally cool with that. And he told me that his rodeo announcers, the rodeo ground is actually a team roping ground. It's not a bull riding ground, and all the images I was putting up were bull riding images. So he wanted something other than a bull riding image. And this is the image I put up in 2012, Roper. And in 2011, this is the image that I put up. And I put it up late in the day. I put it up the day prior to the fair starting, when the rodeo grounds was actually going to be used. And I decided it would be a good idea to also paste his outhouses, which were close by. But I didn't have enough time, so I returned the following morning. I actually got there, it was still dark, and I started pasting the outhouse using my car headlights, and I saw a really beautiful sunrise occur. And I noticed that there were like all these 18-wheeler vehicles that the stock contractors were there for the rodeo. A bunch of cowboys were all there, but no one was moving about, you know, as I started putting pictures on the outside of the outhouse. And one fellow, though, around, I don't know, 6:30 in the morning, got up to use the restroom as I was working. And we introduced ourselves to one another. He went in and took care of his business, but on the way out, you know, he turned to me and said, where else would you find a black guy at 6:30 in the morning wallpapering the outside of an outhouse on an Indian reservation at a rodeo event? And it was a really nice moment, you know, because it was an improbable moment, but it was really, in the words of Spalding Gray, a perfect moment because it just, I don't know, it just brought us together in a very nice way. It turns out his name was Fred. He was going to be the announcer for the radio. And yeah, so these are the outhouses that I pasted. And this is Austin Mix, the guy who owns that rodeo ground. That's the piece that I did for him for the rodeo this past October. So I'm telling you that story to kind of set the stage for how it came to be that I found myself wallpapering the outside of an outhouse in Tuba City, because it's an unlikely journey. You know, I went to medical school, and but I've always had a love for street art. So I'm gonna tell you how that all came to be. So the title of the talk is From There to Here, Surfing the Intersection of Culture, Religion, and Idealism. And I'm just gonna start by telling you a few of the influences that all kind of came together to make this happen. Because if you had asked me 10 years ago what I would like to be doing, it would actually be what I'm doing. I just had no idea how to get there. And so this is a series of events that got me there. I'm going to start with this. I'm from North Carolina originally. I'm from Raleigh. And yeah. I went to an alternative Quaker school for my junior high school years. So that's the first improbable thing that happened in my life. Because, let's see, that was 1969, and the Raleigh public school system was integrated the year before. And my parents were concerned because there was a lot of violence happening within the schools at that point, a lot of racial violence. And they didn't want me in that environment, so they were looking at sending me to a military school, but they ended up sending me to this incredibly cool hippie school up in the mountains. And it was at that school that I had an opportunity to go into the dark room for the first time when I was 12. I started shooting 35mm black and white film. But one of the cool things about this environment, I mean, you saw the people in that photo. There were just 24 students for grades 7, 8, 9. There were maybe 9 dorm parents and teachers. And actually in this photo, if you look again, you can see there's also 9 dogs. But in that environment, there was a big emphasis on building community, what it means to be a contributing member to a community. And I didn't get the lesson really during the time I was there. It was just one of those things that gelled after I left that environment. These are my parents. I just want to give them a shout out. They've passed away, but they were big supporters of me. I'm an only child, and it was hard for them to send me away to this boarding school, but they felt it was a loving environment, and they were absolutely right. Music and visual art, you know, it's like, yeah, for those people who got here a little early, you got to experience some of my playlist, and it just helps me relax and get into a creative space, you know, to have music as a part of my life. I'm not, as you probably find out, I'm not naturally a public speaker. I'm not altogether comfortable in this environment, and again, I'm not trained as an artist. I'm not going to use the language of art to talk to you about this story. But yeah, music has always been there for me, and it's a very soothing force. So this is me at about age 8, playing drums, which I still play. A fellow from North Carolina by the name of John Coltrane made the observation that the main thing a musician wants to do is to give a picture to the listener of the many wonderful things he knows of and senses in the universe. And that's what I get from music, and that's also the energy that I put into the art that I create. So, you know, in the 60s, there were magazines like Life magazine, Look magazines, and they were noted for their photo essays, where photographers would tell really engaging human stories through a series of black and white photographs. And yeah, my parents got like, I can't now recall whether it came out every week or every month, but Eugene Smith was one of the photographers whose work was featured in Life magazine, and his photo essays moved me a great deal. This is from actually the 70s in a small community in Japan where people were affected by mercury poisoning in a fishing village. And again, this is just the imagery that I grew up with. This is a photograph by a guy named Eugene Richards, who also shot for Life magazine, more so in the 80s and until the early 90s when the magazine folded. But he's a modern day example of a photo essayist. This image, I recall seeing, I think, early 90s in Life magazine, and it was from a photo essay Richards did on the crack epidemic. He looked at 3 cities in the Northeast, 2 in New York, 1. He looked at 3 communities, 2 in New York, 1 in Philadelphia. And it just amazed me the access he was able to get to this community of people who apparently trusted him, you know, to tell their own stories. And in 1992, I actually had an opportunity to go spend a week with him at a photo workshop in Santa Fe. And it was a wonderful opportunity, you know, just to pick his brain and find out how one goes about telling moving stories like this. This is a Gulf War veteran from the early 90s. One of the first public artists I became aware of, probably when I was in college in the 70s, is Diego Rivera. And the thing that struck me about his work, besides the boldness of it and the colors, was the fact that he was celebrating the every person, and he chose to frequently put his work in places, in public places, where the every person could see themselves being celebrated. And this certainly is one of the biggest influences on me doing what I'm doing now, this public art project that I started out on the Navajo Nation. This photo was taken in 1980 by a woman named Martha Cooper. And you know, it was the beginning of the hip hop movement. Actually, in 1980, the hip hop movement was already in full force. I was doing my family practice residency at this point in Huntington, West Virginia. And actually, I started doing that in 1983. But I would take trips frequently to New York City so I could try to spot trains like this or see people, you know, breakdancing on the street. And there was something that was just the energy of this movement spoke to me. This is the cover of an album by Jean-Michel Basquiat. He actually appears on this album playing bongos. He also had a rap in it, but it was taken out because it wasn't very good. This is a piece by Keith Haring. I actually got a chance to see a lot of Keith's work in New York in the early 80s. Travel has been a really big influence in me doing the work that I am doing on the reservation in terms of the public art. In that well, I mean, you know, there's the obvious. You know, you get to see new things and appreciate new ways of doing things. In 1992, I had an opportunity to take off a year from my work on the reservation and to do an incredible bicycle trip from the top of Africa, 12,000 miles, to the very bottom. And the thing about that bicycle trip was just the insight it gave me into what it means to be a part of a team. There were 3 other cyclists for 9.5 months. You know, I was with these guys every day. But it also gave me a sense of what's possible just by, like I said, working together as a team and with a lot of determination and heart. This is the 3 of us, 3 of the 4 cyclists. This is actually at the very end of the trip. We were celebrating the completion of the journey. And these are some of the images that I took along the way. So in 1987, I started working on the Navajo Nation. I went to medical school for 4 years in Nashville, Tennessee, and I started my family practice residency in West Virginia, then finished it in Northern Ohio. The government paid for my education for 4 years, so rather than owe money at the conclusion of my training, I owed time. I had to go work in a health shortage area for 4 years, so that's how I wound up out on the Navajo Nation. And just to make a quick comment about this photo, this billboard used to read, "Welcome to Pepsi Country." So the Navajo Nation, I don't know if you guys know, but one of the problems that people are challenged with out there is there's a high incidence of diabetes. Nationwide, amongst whites, it's approximately 1 out of 12. Amongst people of Latin descent, it's approximately 1 out of 9. People of African American descent, it's roughly 1 out of 6, 1 out of 7. But for Native Americans, it's 1 out of 4. So, and you know, the issue with diabetes isn't necessarily just having the high blood sugar, but it's the effect on all the organ systems of the body, which can be devastating. So we really wanted to get people to make an association between their diet and their health. And when I say we, there was a public health nurse who joined me one night in going out and altering this billboard. But I mean, part of the reason I stick this in is just to share with you, the desire to, to speak to people through a visual medium like this. And this is actually a good example of blending both my healing art practice as well as my visual art practice. So the Navajo Nation is located in the Four Corners region of the United States. There's 27,500 square miles in size, is home to approximately 170,000 people. And just to point out a thing or two, I'm sorry I don't have a pointer here with me, but the area where I live is located between several national parks, monuments. For example, the north rim of the Grand Canyon is here, the south rim of the Grand Canyon is over here, Monument Valley is here. So it's a beautiful area. You'll see this region here is called the Paint Desert. Where I am is right here in that region. We're very close to the border with Utah. But I'll talk a little bit about this in just a minute, but this area gets a lot of tourist traffic. And I think part of the reason I'm here now is because I exploited that. I exploited where I was. And it's a fascinating thing because the Navajo Nation, I think I have some pictures of it coming up, in fact I'm sure I do, is desolate to some extent. And but because I exploited the fact that there's all this tourist traffic going to these beautiful places and putting pictures along the roadside, it's given this project a lot of exposure. So yeah, just real quickly here, to give you an idea of the demographics on the reservation, everybody pretty much who lives on the reservation is Navajo. And if you've not traveled to the Southwest, it's actually an amazing thing because people look like my childhood image of indigenous people. The median household income for the Navajo Nation is about $27,000, approximately half that of the state of Arizona. 1/3 of all households on the res have incomes of less than $15,000. Poverty rates on the reservation are twice as high as poverty rates in the rest of the state. And the unemployment rate on the Navajo Nation is approximately 50%. Now, this is ironic because there are 5 natural resources, 4 really big ones on the reservation. And if the contracts for the exploitation of those resources had been written differently, the Navajo people would be the richest group of people living in the United States. But because it's very much like a colony, people are materially poor. As an aside, does anyone here know what those resources are on the reservation that are being exploited for energy purposes? Yeah, that's a good guess. No. There are people advocating for wind energy, but so the 4 resources include coal, natural gas, oil, and uranium. So these people should be rolling in it. Interestingly, approximately 6 to 8 weeks ago, President Obama signed legislation to give the tribe $250 million to compensate them for these poor tour contracts that were written back in the 70s. But yeah, so this is actually, this was shot in the early 90s, but it gives you an idea of the living conditions of people on the reservation. Approximately 30% of my patient staff don't have running water or electricity. I laugh because I find that to be incomprehensible, especially given that there's coal, natural gas, oil, and in this environment, you know, people are challenged. You know, it's like they're challenged in the sense that I get this. I get the impression at times that there is a lack of hope. The teen suicide rate on the reservation, for example, is roughly 6 times the national average. There's high rates of drug use, there's high rates of alcohol use, there's high rates of domestic violence. Code talkers. So, bringing this forward a little bit, one of the places that has always attracted me is Brazil. So even when I was a kid, I remember seeing examples of, Pele playing in the World Cup in the early 60s on a black and white television, and I would be so moved that I would go out to my local school, my primary school, and kick a kickball around for hours by myself and wanting to be Pele. It's just, you know, Brazil. So the first time I had an opportunity to go to Brazil was in 2004. And what struck me was the energy of the place. It's like there's creativity and art just everywhere. I mean, it's literally on the sidewalk. This is a sidewalk pattern in Copacabana designed by a famous landscape architect in Brazil. This is a building that was designed by Oscar Niemeyer, another famous architect in Brazil. But a lot of the things that you see there are iconic. You might not necessarily associate them with Brazil, but I mean, this imagery is like kind of, it's the spirit of mid-century modernism in Brazil. This is Carmen Miranda. When I was there in 2009, I went back to Brazil in 2009. They were celebrating her 100th birthday, showing some of her old movies on the side of this museum. But again, just, you know, the color, the creativity, there's a palpable energy that I feel there that I don't feel a lot here in the States. Yeah, so this stairway, all the tile that you see there that's inlaid was done by this guy here on the left. His name is Celerone. He's an artist from Argentina who took it upon himself to lay this tile on a public walkway. And this is from 2004. You know, again, I'm noticing the graffiti and the street art. And there were a couple things that struck me. It was everywhere, and the government seemed to be tolerant of it. Or I hadn't seen such a profusion of art like this on the street. So, all right, this is my cousin Cookie. Yeah. I know this is seeming like a disjointed story, and I'm just jumping around. But Cookie is a special person to me. This is from many years ago, but in 2009, several things, actually in 2006, several things occurred in my life that were challenging. My wife of 3 years came to me and said she realized she was either lesbian or bisexual. She knew she wasn't heterosexual and wanted to take a year apart where we didn't talk to one another. And within 3 weeks of her sharing that with me, my father called from North Carolina to tell me to come home because he was dying. So the following day I went to North Carolina and I was with my dad for 3 weeks before he passed away. And my father was living in our family home 50 years, and 50 years of stuff was in that house, 50 years of memories. You know, that was my childhood home, which I thought was going to be my inheritance. And the house wasn't worth a lot of money, but you know, I thought I would have gotten something out of it. My father got a reverse mortgage, and yeah, so Cookie came and helped me clean everything out of that home within 3 weeks, and yeah, so we could turn the house back over to the bank. It was a really difficult time, and during that time I chose to see a therapist who asked me how I was doing, of course, but you know, once I got through this tough patch, what I saw happening in my life. And the one thing I could identify was that I wanted to do something in art different from what I had been doing. Since I moved to the reservation, I had a black and white dark room, and I'd go out into the community, take pictures of the community, and I'd have occasional gallery shows. But the people who I was photographing, you know, weren't seeing themselves, and it wasn't a sharing. So I just knew that I wanted to do something differently. I didn't know what. And that was in 2007. 2009, I went back to Brazil, as I said, and I went with this great woman, Jenna, and we were just into hanging out. You know, there are times when I travel, I want to have an epiphany. But this wasn't one of those times. I was really just into chilling out and going to the beach, relaxing, and having a good time. We were there during Carnival. And yeah, but again, you know, I kept noticing the art on the street and just how they made it feel and the quality of the art. And you know, there were different styles of art. And as I said, it was everywhere. This is a pretty nice neighborhood, and here's a piece. Yeah. Does anyone recognize Divine from the John Waters film? No? Okay. This is a style of art that's found on the street in the northern part of Brazil, based on a wood block print. But yeah, so what I was studying Portuguese during the 3 months I was in Brazil in 2009. But I wasn't picking the language up quickly. What I started doing was using art on the street as a means of navigating through the city. And in the community where I was staying most of the time, which was Salvador, I kept seeing work by this one guy. I recognized his style and his subject matter. And it seemed that wherever I went, he had already been, and he got work up. There's a concept that came out of New York from the people who were doing graffiti. It was the concept of being all city. And in order to be all city, you had to get your tag up on all 5 train, well, the lines going to the 5 different boroughs in New York. And if you were able to do that, then you were considered a king, a graffiti king. But this guy just, you know, seemed to be all city because, like I said, I don't care where I went, there was his work. So, like I said, I was in Brazil for 3 months in 2009, and I was with that woman, Jenna, who was with me for 9 weeks, but then she left and went back to the States. And Brazil was amazingly awesome during the time I was with her, but it was in those last 3 weeks when she was gone that everything changed. And I started doing, I was influenced to start doing the public art project that I'm doing now. I was staying in this community called San Antonio, which was a lively community. There would be people, you know, out on the street at night, drinking, playing music, singing, kids running around. And this is the view from the place where I was staying. I was staying in a flat that I was sharing with a woman who's a singer from Montreal. And as it turned out, there was a guy who had a studio on the street level. And I don't know if you recognize the style of art, and back of him. But for the 9 weeks prior, he's the guy who was putting pieces everywhere that I saw all over the city. So I started going to his studio every day just to hang out with him and talk about going out and just talk about street art. And it was cool because there were artists from all over the world who were there with him, sharing their sketchbooks, talking about going out together, getting pieces up. In south of the equator, spray paint is really expensive, so people get creative. A lot of people in South America will use tar because it's super cheap, and they'll water it down and get different shades of gray to get their full grayscale using tar. What Daniel did was he got a container of white latex house paint and a little container of blue dye, and that's, you just got a water bottle, cut a little trough out of it, and he would mix his paint in that, and then start using that little roller to generate work. He is using a spray can there to do his outline. So just before I left Brazil, I saw this, and this was absolutely mind-blowing for me the first time I saw it, because this was, I don't know if anyone knows who this piece is by. There's a photographer from France by the name of J.R. who did a project in Brazil, and he photographed women and then put their faces on the side of the slum looking down into the rich communities of Rio. But it was the first time I saw a photograph being used as a street art medium. And like I said, I had a dark room on the reservation since 87 and had this love for street art. So upon returning to the reservation, I wrote to JR and asked him if he would be interested in coming to the reservation to do a project there. I don't know if you can see the faces along the aqueduct. Yeah. So I waited for 3 weeks to hear something back from him. And things are pretty spread out on the reservation. I have a son, actually, who is half Navajo. He lives approximately 50 miles away with his mother. And whenever I would drive to see him, while I was waiting to hear from JR, it's like, this landscape that I've been seeing for 22 years suddenly started to look differently, because I was asking myself, if JR were to come, where would he put his pieces? How would he engage the community? How would he go about doing a project such as this? And I never heard anything from him. So I decided to start doing it myself. And this is one of the first pieces I did. This is actually the day after I put this piece up. You can see how poorly it's cut out, how poorly it's installed. It's already coming off the wall less than 12 hours after I put it up. But yeah, I had to start somewhere. This was an instructive piece as well, because I came back to the reservation in 2009 filled with this creative desire, this creative pulse that I had in Brazil. And I thought, okay, street artists sneak around putting pieces up. They do it illegally. So I was doing all that. I'd go out at night and put my pieces up, but no one knew who was putting these pieces up. And what this is actually is I created a mandala. A friend of mine he was studying to be a roadman in the Native American church. And I know that doesn't mean a lot to most of you, but on the reservation, one of the religions is the Native American church. And anytime you see a teepee, it's not something that people live in, but it's for a ceremony that happens overnight, during the course of the night. And people ingest peyote, and they sing prayers in the circle of the teepee with a fire in the middle. And this is how a peyote blossom looks, and my friend was showing that to me. So I took a photo of his hand, and then, like I said, made a mandala, put it on this roadside structure. But so I drove by it and noticed that it was coming off, and thought, okay, when I return from my trip to Flagstaff, I'll paste it back. I'll paste it down. But when I came back from Flagstaff a few hours later, the piece had been scraped off the wall. It was gone. So I thought that was odd. I thought to myself, I'll return another day and just, put another piece up because I really liked the texture of that wood, the color. But a couple days later when I went back, the structure was down. It was gone. Yeah. So part of the dance of doing this project has been figuring out, what the boundaries are. This is a community that doesn't have a tradition of muralism, public art. There certainly is a tradition of art, but not public art in this way. So one of the things I didn't know when I put this piece on this building is that the people who owned it were fundamentalist Christians who had no tolerance for the Native American church. Yeah, and again, I like pairing imagery with function, and water is a big issue here in the Southwest. So this was another insightful moment, putting this photograph of code talkers on this building that already was tagged with graffiti. I later learned from someone in this community that there had been a meeting within this community where people discussed this piece. And one of the questions that was raised was, why would someone put a photograph of code talkers over graffiti? That's not honoring the code talkers. If you wanted to honor the code talkers, then why not create a roadside stand with wordage that recognizes the code talkers, such as this. And I like this billboard because it really kind of represents what I was up against, what the standard for art was in the community. This is me at maybe 13, learning to flip the bird, which I can do very well now. But I include this photo here because, this is kind of the pranksterism energy that filled me at about this time when I was going out at night, putting these pieces up. It was more about me getting up and, just having fun. And that changed actually with this installation. I put this up one night. I didn't know who owned this roadside stand. It was falling down. I just liked that background color and wanted to use that. And roughly a week later, I was driving by this roadside stand and there were people out repairing it. They were building it back up. And I was curious and stopped by and asked if I could take a photo. And they said, sure. So many people have stopped to take photos of the code talkers that they decided to start using the stand again. And I thought, so I told them, well, I put that photograph up, and they thanked me and asked me if I would put a photograph up on the other side to stop traffic coming from the other direction. And it was at that point that I realized, this could be a win-win situation where I get to, get my imagery up, but it gets to be of some benefit to the community. So yeah, not all of my images though were on roadside stands. I'm not going to play this video for you, but it's I had to figure out pretty quickly how to get a big piece up by myself because I could never get a crew of people together to assist me with getting a piece up. But this was in April of 2010 when I finally figured out how to do this by myself. And actually, as I was driving from my home to Flagstaff, I passed this house. The guy who owns this house has been working on this house now for 14 years, and he's building it as money allows, money in his health. And I've talked to him several times. We're friends now. I asked him if I could put this piece on his house, but he's at the point now where he's finished the roof and he's putting siding on the house, and the siding is about right here. It's just about to cover that installation. Yeah, so this is a functional outhouse as well. So one of the things that also occurred to me was that with the skill set, not only could I use it to help make a contribution to the economic growth of the community by, like I said, there are roadside vendors who realize more tourists are going to stop if they have hard to understand. So not only was I doing that, but it occurred to me that I could use this skill set to amplify some voices who are advocating for a change within the community. So there's a mountain in Flagstaff called the San Francisco Peaks, and it has a ski resort on it. And the ski resort gets the temperatures, but it doesn't always get snow. So they wanted to start making snow from reclaimed wastewater, essentially urine. And there are 13 tribes around the area who see that mountain as a sacred site and considered the use of reclaimed wastewater to make snow as the desecration of a sacred site. So what I did was I asked my friends what they thought about what was happening, and whatever they said, we actually wrote onto their faces, and then I photographed them with the words on their faces and made this mural opposing the making of snow with the reclaimed wastewater. But the federal district court in San Francisco ruled twice that the ski resort could do this, so snow is being made using the reclaimed wastewater. This is, another example. There's a proposal for a tram to be built on the east rim of the Grand Canyon that would take people from the rim down to the Colorado River at a site called the Confluence. And there are many people who are opposed, but by the same token, this is a community that has an unemployment rate approaching 50%. Jobs are scarce, so this issue is dividing families. There are people who would like to see this resort come in. And I wanted to include this series of images because there is a bit of a dialogue that occurs with the community on many different levels. There are people who will ask me, like as I'm putting a piece up, they'll see me and ask me what I'm doing and why. And one of my pat answers is, I'm reflecting back to you, to the community, the beauty that you've shared with me over the past 27 years. And I want these images, just to uplift people, to surprise them, to let them know that, someone cares. And I get feedback from time to time that people get a great feeling of pride in seeing this imagery along the roadside. But these images actually are ads for the People's Climate March that happened in September. So I used an abandoned building to put those posters up. And shortly after the People's Climate March, someone went over my pieces, which is cool. It happens. But now, so this was, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, but this is the state of that wall now. So the dialogue continues. This building actually, there are some kids there who identify as Crips. And so one of the things that I really appreciated about Brazil was that sense of community with a group of like-minded artists. And I just thought it would be a cool thing if I could get some artists from different parts of the world to come up to the reservation to paint murals. So that is the Painted Desert project. I started in 2012, inviting some pretty big names out to the res. I was surprised at how many people accepted and were willing to come out and have that experience for not a lot of money. The guy who painted this rabbit is named Roa. He's from Belgium. He's a big name in the world street art. I try to sensitize the artists coming to the reservation to the mindset of the people out there. I mean, it really is a different world, different cosmology. This is a traditional hogan. This is a female hogan. And there are still people actually living in structures like this. It has an earthen floor. As you can see it, there's earth on top as well. It's made of wood. These are two artists from Canada who came out this past summer. We stayed in that hogan for a night while they were painting murals there. This is our host, Louise. This is Gaia, another pretty well-known artist in the world of street art, who's originally from New York City, but presently lives in Baltimore. One of the things I do also is, as part of the orientation to the culture, arrange for artists to take part in sweat lodges, where elders from the community will share with people insights into the culture and also give them some idea of what is considered safe to paint and what's not. This is Lebrona from Canada. I tell the artists, you know, I know what your style of art is, and but it's really important to me that you come out to the reservation without a preconceived idea of what you're going to paint, but just kind of vibe off the experience and go with that. So Lebrona, yeah, just checking out horseback riders, and this is the piece he created. This is 2501, who's from Italy. This piece is called Flock of Birds. This is Mechanical Bull by Pixel Pancho, also from Italy. This piece is by Alexis Diaz from Puerto Rico. This is also Alexis. This is the piece Gaia did. Bird Gaia. So, you know, these are just some images from the first year of the Painted Desert project. We just finished season 3. And the thing that occurred to me, you know, I've been there for, like I said, now it's 27 and a half years. And my relationship with the community is, you know, people know me as their physician. And it's been interesting because, you know, when folks come to the clinic, the power dynamic is such that they are coming to me for assistance. And one might say that I am, you know, in a more dominant position. But this project really has kind of flipped that paradigm such that I'm no longer in that position of authority. And it's really deepened my relationship with the community. It's, yeah, really complements. This art practice totally complements my practice within the clinic. This piece in the background is by a woman from Argentina. And let's see if we can get this to work. Yeah, so this is just a stop motion of all the pieces that she painted. But this is a representation of the morning prayer that traditional Navajo people do with corn pollen. Yeah, this is a piece that was painted by an artist from Nevada, Gilbert Bender. So this is, we're almost done. But I just want to take a moment to tell this story because it's insightful also. And it's a reflection of where my relationship is with the community. So this is a food stand in an area that's used as a flea market. Every Saturday, this area is overrun with people selling things from stands like this or from trailers or from the back of their vehicles. And an artist from Washington State, in fact, I forget where he's from, was one of the first people who came out to the Painted Desert to take part in the Painted Desert project in 2009. His street art name is Doodles. He painted 4 sides of this woman's food stand. And you'll notice there's another food stand in the back. Just keep that image in your head. I'm going to make reference to it here in just a minute. But these are the 4 sides that Doodles painted of this one food stand. This is the north side, and no, this is the north side. But anyway, so Doodles painted this, and every Saturday it was a happening, bustling place. And one October, approximately 14 months after he painted it, it was gone. And I mean, it's a pretty big structure. That's about 12 feet, so it's 12 feet all the way around. And it didn't make sense to me that it was gone, so I went back and asked the woman who works here in this food stand, what happened to Mrs. Woody's food stand? And she said, well, you know, Mrs. Woody doesn't have such a good reputation, which I didn't know. She said that Mrs. Woody got into an argument with one of her customers, and apparently she was making fried bread, which is a deeply fried bread. And she was using a propane, a propane stove, and she had a skillet on this propane stove. And while she was out giving one of her customers a hard time, a gust of wind came, blew over her skillet, and torched her her food stand. And the woman who told me the story said, "That's why you should always be nice to your customers." Which I thought was a great moral to the story. But I really missed having art there in that spot. And I was in touch with Nicholas, the artist who painted that, and said, yeah, wouldn't it be a cool thing if you came back and helped build a food stand for Mrs. Woody that you could then decorate and paint. So I talked with Mrs. Woody about this. I see her off and on. She comes to the clinic, sit out front, sell food from a cooler. And I asked her if she was interested in this happening, and she said, yeah, but I don't think she really believed that it was going to happen. And so the day that Nicholas was coming to my house, I just, for a month, every day I was trying to find Mrs. Woody. I went to look for her where I thought she lived. I couldn't find her. But the day that Nick was coming back, she was back out in front of the clinic, and I said, okay, look, they're coming. This is really going to happen. And it was awesome because, you know, it's like I said, my relationship with the community is such that people generally don't come over to my house and just hang out. But now Mrs. Woody was coming every day. She was bringing food. Her son, her grandkids would come and assist with the painting of this new food stand. So this is people from the community erecting the food stand. That's Mrs. Woody wearing the red hat. That's Mrs. Woody on her knees assisting with the erection of the food stand. And they started working on this at, Nicholas and a woman named Monica, Nick and a woman named Monica worked for 2 weeks building these panels, but then they started putting it up at 5 o'clock in the evening on a Saturday and worked until 5 in the morning. And Mrs. Woody was there for every minute of it. And this is Mrs. Woody's new pimped out food stand. I was there on opening day when she started serving food. So I've learned many lessons through this project. This is my last story, and then you guys are out of here. Thank you for your time. But so one of the lessons that I learned is just the lesson of letting go, and you know, just how important it is for me anyway to do something as selflessly as possible, you know, with my heart and soul, and just kind of putting it out there. So this particular installation I did in 2010 at a difficult point in my life. In the clinic where I worked, just the politics of the clinic were quite bad, and I needed to just put that energy out into the universe. And this piece has kind of become iconic for the Painted Desert project. It's the the logos, so to speak. And it was on this house for about 2.5 years. And one day I was passing by, and it was being the house was being taken down. So one of the things that's informed this project occurred in 1991 when I was invited to a sand painting ceremony. I had a 2-year-old patient who had a seizure, and the parents were concerned, so they brought their daughter to the clinic and had us evaluate her. We had to make a decision. Was her seizure new onset epilepsy, or was it something that was short-lived and a one-time event? So if you have what's called a febrile seizure, your temperature goes up quickly, people can seize as a result of that. And it's not necessarily epilepsy. So we told the parents that their daughter was fine, that she wasn't, she didn't have epilepsy, she just had a febrile seizure, but they wanted to get a ceremony done to ensure that everything was good, everything was put back as it was back in balance. So I was invited to a Hogan, like the one I showed you a photograph of, and I got there around 7 in the morning, and on his knees on the earthen floor was a medicine man. He was completing a large panel, a sand painting made of different color sand. It was maybe 7 feet wide by 5 feet deep. And he'd been working on it the entire night. And upon finishing it, he sang a prayer. But then he told the parents to take the girl's clothes off, leave her diaper on, to place her in the middle of his painting, which I thought, I didn't know what was going to happen to the painting. For some reason, I thought it was going to be, I don't know, saved. But anyway, so the girl is sitting there, and the medicine man is singing a prayer, and as he's singing, she's just playing in this brightly colored sand. You're destroying his hard work. But he finished singing the prayer, he took the girl off, and then started collecting his sand into different colored piles to put it away. And it's that energy, as I said, just giving your heart and soul for the recreation of balance and beauty that informs this project that I'm doing while letting it go. And this is Adrienne, the 2-year-old girl, who had the febrile seizure with her 2 kids and her husband. She's doing fine. She's seizure-free. And that's the end. You guys made it. Thank you. Sure. Yeah.
So we'll take a few minutes for questions if people want to ask a few that are more remote along. So.
Yeah. North Carolina, represent.
When did you switch from
Roughly 2 years into the project.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was that, did you like the switch or?
Yeah, I mean, in truth, I really miss working in the darkroom. Like I said, my darkroom on the reservation is still up. I haven't used it for like 2.5 years. But yeah, I mean, I just love that aesthetic, But it's such a labor-intensive, water-intensive. I feel bad making excuses now because I never thought I would adopt or accept digital photography. But it's just so much easier to do this project anyway. The turnaround is quicker. And I'm still working 40 hours a week, at my job. So everything that I do here is, after hours. And it's just like I said, I don't have enough time to get into the darkroom, process film, and then scan it and digitize it to blow it up really big. Yeah.
Did you ever have run-ins with the police at all when you were putting up these pieces?
In Phoenix, I did, yeah. In Phoenix, I was putting a piece up on the wall that I thought was cool. Police pulled up in a couple panels, asked if I owned the building, or asked if I knew who owned the building. I did not, and they told me they could give me a citation. The glue was still wet, so I offered to take it down, and they told me to go ahead and take it down. I asked if I could take a photograph of it just before I took it down, and they allowed me to do that, but I really wished I had asked for them to be in the photo, but I didn't. Maybe that. But on the reservation, you know, people are generally cool. I actually had an experience where I was putting a piece out on a wall that I hadn't asked about when the building was abandoned. And, you know, less than 50 yards from where I was working, I witnessed the police in like 2 or 3 different units stop a vehicle and make an arrest for bootlegging. But yeah, you know, they saw me working, but fortunately it's never been an issue on the roads. Yeah.